Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about quality. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, given the recent CrowdStrike outage, should software companies start taking tech depth, code quality and good design patterns more seriously? Well, I think that they are doing the thing that businesses always do. And it's not just businesses, it's basically anybody. When it comes to risk management is what they're doing. So if you take yourself as an example, if I told you that I can sell you a insurance that insures you for anything and everything that can possibly go wrong in your life, but in order for you to have it, you will just have to pay me like an insane amount of money, and there are restrictions. You can't go outside, you have to live in special bunkers and things like that. Like there's a bunch of requirements on you. Would you buy that insurance from me? Probably not. And so it becomes a compromise. All right, so how much are you willing to do in order to ensure that nothing happens to you? Same thing when we deliver products. So how much investment do we want to make into creating something and making all the tests and ensuring things and things like that? I heard it's an internet rumor, so of course it has to be true, that NASA's like the Mars rover, like every line of code or something like that was worth $5,000 or something like that. They did some calculation. I'm not sure if that's true, but in a scenario like that where, as you can imagine, it's going to be very, very tricky to send up someone and debug that code or so forth and so forth. The design of that thing has to be pretty well, it has to be pretty well made and fairly robust given all circumstances. Same thing when we talk about things being military grade, I hope. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people from the military can say that sometimes the equipment isn't all up to scratch. But the idea being that depending on what you're doing, depending on what you're trying to achieve, you're never trying usually, unless you have other reasons, to design a solution or product or anything like that with the intent of it not working. What you're trying to do is to find that balance between investment and value. Everybody is doing that every single day, all the time, everywhere, for basically everything. Time and investment versus value gained. And the CrowdStrike outage, and like it doesn't have to just be this, can be anything, is a symptom of that problem, where you have a gigantic system of a network of different people and systems and services and so forth that are all together trying to do the thing that they are doing. Usually these sort of things happen not because one single thing fails, it's usually a cascade of various complicated things that fail at the same time. It becomes a bit of a butterfly effect, right? You have one system over here that was designed to do A, B, and C, and it does that really well, but there's an oversight in the design, for example, or so forth and so forth, and right now that doesn't matter, but then 5 years later there's another system that integrates to that system, and then they have a codependence, and it just grows. It becomes a network of different say in our case, network calls or jobs or something like that, and nobody really is noticing that this very dangerous situation, that's the risk management. If you want to go into that, that's exactly what you do. You try to look at what are all the moving parts and components and how they interact and affect each other, and is there a combination of events that can take place that causes a catastrophic outage. This is basically impossible to figure out. It's a really, really difficult. And as you can imagine if I wanted, let's take a simple example that hopefully can hit home a little bit. Let's imagine that you work at one of these really large companies. It doesn't have to be one of the ones that I have been at, of course, but a similar sort of industry company where you have hundreds and hundreds of different systems. And in order for you to ship one single application, you have to understand every single one of those systems and the impact that your system can have on any of them. Doesn't matter which one. You actually have to do that before, because that would be, in theory, I'm sort of generalizing a little bit, of course, but in theory that would be what you would need to do in order to be pretty sure that there's no risk. And there are companies who do something very similar to this, guys. That's why I've worked for a company where the time it took to get a single Azure account, like a subscription, just to spin up a basic database, took more than 5 months, because of all the approvals and presentations and reviews and all this stuff. And as I said, I could have still taken down like that part of the system if I wanted to, because there's no way to be 100% sure that nothing will ever fail ever. And so companies do care about this. But as you can imagine, if that was the requirement, then you would never ship anything. It doesn't matter if it's software, it could be anything. Literally, you would have no medicine, no food, no nothing, because there is simply there is always a balance between what is feasible, like security-wise, to make sure that you care about quality and things like that. It's the same thing with your food or whatever. Like, you cannot possibly have the idea that nothing bad can ever happen. But at the same time, you can't just throw caution to the wind and say, yeah, we don't care about any of this sort of stuff. It's always, and that is, it's sad, but that is the way that I argue. Like, there's a good comedian who talked here in Sweden who made a bit about, imagine being the first, like the early stage humans, where in order for you to figure out what food was safe to eat, you just had to eat it and see if you died. That was basically it. And that's what I'm talking about. That is literally how we learn as a species. Someone has to go out and try something, usually trying to do it in the safest way possible without, as I said, investing so much that they can't afford it anymore, because you can always make the argument that you can use more security. Like, you can justify security. It's very easy. As soon as something bad happens or something like that isn't really working out and so forth goes on, you can always make the assumption, you should have known better, you should have done more testing, you should have done A, B, and C. And I go, yeah, you can make that argument for everything, for literally everything. And the problem is that if you always have that mindset that anybody who tries anything or so forth and so forth should be punished if they didn't, if something goes bad, basically, because if something goes bad, clearly they could have done more. Well, that's not really true if we're really honest about it. If we see that people have cared, like they haven't been like overly negligible and so forth and so on, and we do this today, like we are holding people accountable in some industries and so forth, if they're completely ignoring like practice and stuff like that with the intent of making a profit or things like that. If we can prove that, you are held accountable. And companies do care about quality. Trust me that they do. It's not as easy as that they should just care more, because you can always make that argument. So what I want you to take away from this is that I don't think that just because you have an outage, that means that companies would care more or less about code quality, they should and so forth. They do. It's just that it's basically impossible to never ever design a system or a product or anything that never fails. It doesn't matter what it is, guys. You can always make the claim that people should care more about quality, because it will always be true. The thing that is true, though, in my opinion at the very least, is that most of the time, if people are acting in good faith, they are trying to care about these things. And they try to balance delivery speed and things like that with quality. The problem is usually that we're not always 100% agreed where does that line go. And that is a different story. How do you get that perfect sweet spot between taking some risk and not knowing exactly how to design everything perfectly forever and ever and ever and never ever taking any risks whatsoever, versus just throwing things out into production and hoping that it sort of flies? That's what we're trying to figure out. That's an ongoing struggle that's going to be there for the rest of forever, basically. And it doesn't just have to do with software, it has to do with anything. Some risk is necessary to make any progress, because you can't foolproof everything that can possibly go wrong with anything. It just gets harder and harder the bigger the system or the bigger the concept. If you wanted to avoid the CrowdStrike outage, you would basically have to know the future, because I can promise you there was not just one thing here that was wrong, and that thing was you didn't write enough tests. Have a great day.